Demographics is destiny. It's what they say, but is it true? What does it even mean? We're going to explore in today's video. All right, let's dive right into it. I really didn't spend much time thinking about demographics and how that impacts my investments or the economy or where our country's headed until I read this book by Harry Dent, The Demographic Cliff. I think it's a very smart analysis, although I disagree with his conclusions. Harry generally comes to the wrong conclusions, but I think his analysis is pretty sound. What the basis of this book is that basically people spend money on different things at different stages of their lives. So, here at age 26, that's the peak spending time on apartments. Age 31, that's when people spend the most amount of money on their starter homes. 41, trade-up homes. And at 46, age 46 is a person's peak spending age. And that's also the age at which they spend the most money into the economy. And generally, when there's a large proportion of people at the age of around 46, that's generally very supportive for the economy because everyone's out there making a lot of money and spending a lot of money, supporting our economy in general. And money's flowing back and forth from business to consumer to producer. And so you can see, as we pass into age 41, people start spending the most amount of money on their kids' college tuition, 53 autos, this, that, and the other thing. And then, you get down here, age 70, they spend the most amount of money on cruise ships. Age 77, drugs, prescription drugs, nursing homes at age 84. So as you can see, people in different stages of their lives spend their money on different things. And this is important because not every generation is the same size. So, for example, we're all familiar with the baby boom generation and how large that generation was. Right before them was the silent generation. This is the generation that came of age in the Great Depression and World War II, which was a much smaller generation. And you can see that in the charts. So, generally, the 1950s are known as a time of general prosperity in the USA. And this is what the population pyramid looked like in the US in 1955, and I can explain this population pyramid here. So basically the age group is on the left axis here. So you have 0 to 4 years old, 5 to 9 years old, 10 to 14 years old, and the corresponding bars here, the blue bars being the male population, and the red bars being the female population. So this is saying here that 5.8% of the population are male boys between the age of 0 to 4. And 5.6% of the population is female girls, not females, between the age of 0 and 4. So as you can see, back in the 1950s, there was a lot of children being born. This is right in the middle of the baby boom. All the GIs who came back from World War II, late 1940s, and I mean the baby boom really lasted until around 1962. People were just, it was a time of great prosperity in the U.S. and people were having a lot of children to reflect the good times. So, it was a great time to be alive. So this is what a healthy population pyramid looks like. As you can see, it looks like a pyramid. There's a few gaps in here. So this, where it kind of thins out in the middle here, this is the silent generation. So these are the people who were born in the 1920s-ish. So they were the people who came of age at the Great Depression and World War II. And like I said, they were a smaller generation. So you can see that in the population pyramid right here. So at this stage in 1955, there's actually fewer teenagers and 20-year-olds than there is kids. And you see this bulge right here. This is the working age population, pretty young working age population, age early 30s, late 30s, and then it's a pretty healthy profile from then on until old age. You have, so basically as time moves on, each of these age groups moves up the pyramid, and I'll show you how that works in the next page here. But I just want to point out that in general, this is what a healthy population pyramid looks like. You have a reasonable amount of retirees up here. So over age 65, those are the people who those are the retired people who are at the stage of their lives that they're just consuming, they're not producing anymore, and that demographic has to be supported by the rest of society. And in general, that's easy to do when there's more people in the middle here in their prime working age years who are making plenty of money and able to pay those taxes to support these people who are retired. And that's how a healthy society works, a society that's growing and can support its old people and can support its kids. Even though there's a lot of kids here, there's a lot of, these working age people aren't burdened by a huge amount of old people that society has to take care of. So I mean, if most of the investment coming from society is coming from the government can afford to lower taxes and invest in industry versus spending their money taking care of retirees. So I just wanted to point that out. And this, so this is what the population pyramid looks like today. And this is actually a graphic. I will play this for you here. So it starts in 1961. See how the population pyramid looks in 1961. It looks like a pyramid, like it's supposed to. And as it progresses through the years, so now you're at 1971. As you can see now, there's this generation is having less children, and that's because it's a smaller generation, less kids. So this peak right here, this is the peak of the baby boom generation moving through the years, and you'll see that this peak moves its way up the pyramid over time. So I'll just press play again here. So as it keeps moving up, here's 1982. So 1982 was a pretty good time in the US as well. So as you can see here, 1982, we have a lot of an exponential rate of population growth, of people entering the workforce and entering their peak prosperity years. As you can see, if we can draw like kind of a diagonal line this way, so that represents that, as this bulge moves through the years, sorry, excuse me, so for example, what this is showing here is the age group 40 to 45 years. What you're looking at here is exponential growth for the next 20 years. So because, these age groups here are going to move up the population pyramid over time. So, I mean, if you're looking at this right here in 1982, you would think, looking back to this demographic spending wave, so age 41, so trade up homes, that's what people spend the most money on at the age of 41. So let's go back to population pyramid in 1982. So what this is showing us right here is that there will be exponential growth in the next 10, 20 years for people at age 41, of people aged 41. And what do they spend the most money on? Trade up homes. So this is very supportive for real estate prices. So a smart real estate investor would look at this and say, hey, this is an opportunity that maybe I can take advantage of. And in general, if you were to buy a house in 1982, it just went up and up and up. And as you can see, so let's press play again here and fast forward this to 1992. So here we go, that's just this baby boom generation moving its way right up the pyramid. Excuse me. So here is the year 2002. And this is significant. This is around the time, this is just after the stock market bubble of the tech boom. So in the year 2000, there was a huge stock market boom and bust. It was called the tech boom, or the dot-com bubble. That's another way to put it. So as you can see, these are the peak earning years. So 45 to 49. So people in their 40s, those are generally people who are in their peak earning years, and they have plenty of money to invest their money in stocks. Sorry, this just reset for some reason. I'll get this back to the year 2000. Those are the people who have the most amount of money to spend their money on stocks, investing their money in the stock market to create that bubble. And, as you can see, in the year 2001, that age group peaked. And So, that eventually that bubble popped, and then it kind of, the Federal Reserve was forced to lower interest rates to kind of stimulate the economy. But all that really did was blow up a housing bubble. So as you can see, let's fast forward it to 2006. So 2006 and 2007, that was the peak of the last housing bubble. And as you can see here, what we're looking at is the peak demographic here is late 50s. So what's going on here is, no, sorry, late 40s. And there's actually, so from here on, you can see the pyramid starts to slope inward. So this is actually, there's actually less people. Jeez, sorry. I apologize, got some sort of cough. Anyway, not going to edit this out. We'll roll with it. Sorry. So as you can see, as this population pyramid tightens up, this is a lower number of people who are turning age 45 or 40. So you have less people going into that age group. And what do those people spend their money on? Houses. Back to this spending wave. 41 or 46, 46 is your peak spending age. That's when people spend the most amount of money. They make the most amount of money. They produce the most economic activity. And what this population pyramid is showing you is that there are less and less 46-year-olds. There's less and less 46-year-olds. They're getting older. They are, heading into their 50s and eventually heading into retirement. And as you can see, so what this is telling you, 65 is right here. This is the bar chart, or the bar of age 65. This is telling you in 2007 that there's going to be an exponential increase in retirees for the next, from age 45 to 65. That's 20 years. So back in 2007, you could tell that for the next 20 years, you would see exponential increase in people entering retirement age. That's until 2027. So that's what we're still looking forward to. We still got another 4 years of this. So keep that in mind. So let's press play here. So here's 2014, 2019. And as you can see here, the population pyramid isn't really much of a pyramid anymore. It's a big problem that people aren't having kids anymore. The generations are getting smaller and smaller, which means that in the future, we're going to have less working age people to support all these retirees. That's why, in general, these population pyramids, once they turn into this type of structure, it really doesn't spell good things for the economy. So let's fast forward it to today. Sorry. I'll stop it when we get to 2020 here. All right, so 2019, yeah, that's as far as it goes. 2021, so that's pretty much what it looks like today. We have, so as you can see, we have a, here's the low spot right here, age 75 to 79. So as you can see, you're going to have exponential increase. People turning 75 to 79. Exponential increase of that age group. So 75 minus 55. That's 20 years of increasing 75-year-olds. And what do they spend their money on? Gee, I think you can guess. They spend their money on prescription drugs, spend their money on healthcare, spend their money on assisted living facilities, nursing homes, that sort of thing. So a smart investor these days would be thinking that, maybe I should invest in those sectors because those are the sectors that are going to see exponential growth in the next 20 years. So what else is growing? So what else is shrinking? So from 55 to 59 to 45 to 49, that's 10 years of shrinking people in their mid-50s. So what does the spending wave tell us about that? College tuition, automobiles. So you might not want to invest in Chevrolet stock or Tesla stock for that matter. Sorry. Ooh. Not feeling too good. Anyway, let's power on with the video. So we also have an an increasing population of 45 to 49-year-olds. See how this is sloping outwards until you get to this age group here, who are now in their late 20s. So this age group here, who are in their late 20s, this is actually a peak generation here. That's the millennials. So the millennials are the children of the baby boom generation, and that's why they're such a large generation. The millennials are actually the second largest generation after the baby boomers. So pretty substantial and pretty consequential to the economy. So as you can see here, there's going to be an increasing demographic who are turning into their 30s, into their early 30s, into their early 40s, even into their late 40s. So that's an increasing demographic who are going to be buying starter homes and trade-up homes. So that's actually supportive for the real estate market. If it weren't offset by the large number of 65-year-olds and 70-year-olds who are going to be downsizing and transitioning into nursing homes. So those two trends are kind of at tug of war with each other. But actually, the growth in the retirees is actually much stronger than the growth in the in the millennials, and I'll show you those charts in a minute here. But anyway, that is supportive of the real estate market. So if you do have one of these homes that might be viewed as a trade-up home, you might want to just hang on to that for a while. I think it'll be a good investment. I don't see it crashing in anytime soon. But one thing that you might want to ditch if you own any of these are apartments. As you can see, age 26 is when people spend the most money on apartments. And from the population pyramid, you see that there's going to be a shrinking demographic of age 26 people. And it's going to be shrinking for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 25 years. There are not going to be, with every year, there's going to be less people who need apartments. So, if you're the type of person who's planning on being a landlord and renting to 26-year-olds, you're going to be swimming against the tide because there's going to be less and less of these 26-year-olds who are going to be in their peak renting years. All those people are going to be looking to buy starter homes and then trade-up homes. So that's where the growth is going to be in the next 10 years or so, not in the apartment sector, in the single-family home, sector. These millennials, they want to start families and move on with their lives. Can't blame them. They want to move out of those crappy apartments. I certainly don't miss living in those, little 1-2 bedrooms. No, thank you. So what do we want to talk about next here? So as you can see, it's a very powerful way to look at the economy and what sectors are growing, what sectors are shrinking. We're going to have huge growth in nursing homes, healthcare, prescription drugs. I don't know about this cruise ships with all the economic hardship that this is going to cause. I don't know how much money all these retirees are going to have to go on cruises. With this many retirees going into their retirement age, it's actually going to be a tough time to be a retiree because there's just going to be so many of them, and there's only so many nursing homes around. There's only so many assisted living facilities, empty nester type of homes. They're going to be fighting amongst each other for these resources, and extra help is going to be hard to get from the government because the government's going to be torn between, okay, do we invest in our economy, lower taxes for our productive population, make sure they can produce for our country, or are we going to take care of these old people? And that's, old people they vote in large numbers. So that's a very large voting demographic. So maybe the government's just going to support these old people, and maybe you and I are just going to pay much higher taxes just to take care of all these old people. And you also got to figure that, what do these old people own, and how are they going to fund their lifestyle? Well, the typical retiree these days, they own a 60-40 portfolio. It's been their winning strategy of retirement planning for the last 40 years. Basically what that is, it's a portfolio of 60% stocks and 40% bonds. So I would stay away from bonds because all these baby boomers, they need to fund their lifestyle, and they're going to have to sell off these assets that they've been accumulating their whole working lives. So they're going to have to sell these bonds. And who's going to buy these bonds at, the 30-year treasury, 10-year treasury? They're all yielding like 3.5%. Like, who wants to buy that? That's a terrible investment. I would not touch government bonds, or any bonds for that matter, for the foreseeable future. I just wouldn't. It's you gotta figure all of this exponentially growing demographic is going to be selling these assets, and who are going to buy them? The people down here in their 30s and 40s, they're going to be buying homes. They're paying off student loans. They're going to be buying Bitcoin. They're going to be buying cryptocurrencies. They're not going to be buying bonds. Why on earth would you buy that nonsense? It's just a terrible investment when, inflation is 6, 7, 8% and likely to go higher, in my opinion. Because, when you have an exponentially increasing demographic that is retired, those people are not producing. They're all consumption. So if you have more consumption and less production, that results in fewer goods and services, which means the price goes higher. So that's what I see on the horizon for them. So let's take a look at one of the worst demographic disasters in the world today, and that is Japan. So this is the population pyramid for Japan. So just look at this. Japan, what a disaster. They have all these old people age in their 70s, in their 80s, exponential growth going into your 80s. And then you have, let's see, you have this, you have quite a bit of growth in, the 50s, early 60s, but like you have no people, you have a shrinking demographic going into their late 40s. So for the foreseeable future, remember age 40, what was it, 46? 46 is your peak spending age. And this is, there's a peak at age 46 right here in Japan. And they're going to have declining age 46 people for the foreseeable future, actually like steeply declining people. And, you have fewer and fewer people going into their 30s, fewer and fewer people going into their 40s, going into their 20s, fewer and fewer people total. This is a truly awful situation. This means no economic growth. This is a shrinking economy right here, which is a terrible, terrible situation. If I were living in Japan, I would get the heck out of there as soon as I could. There's nothing to be excited about in this economy here. I'm sorry, but there isn't. There's a pretty bad situation in China as well. Let's go to the next page here. This is the demographic pyramid of China. So China's been particularly affected by their one-child policy, which for a long time meant that parents could only have one child. And frequently that meant they would, if these parents found out that they were going to have a girl, they would unfortunately abort that child, which is terrible. And they would try again for a boy. So they had they have a surplus of males right here, and that's what these darker colors mean. So in China, it must be really hard to find, if you're a Chinese man, it must be really hard to find a mate and start a family. The economic situation in China is really taking a turn for the worse. You have, look at this exponential growth of people heading into their 60s. These are all people who are going to be retiring. And, keep in mind, China makes all our stuff. So if they have exponential amount of people who are retiring, those people aren't going to be making your iPhone anymore. Those people aren't going to be making your TVs. There's going to be less people making our stuff. which means that our stuff is gonna cost more. So I really see higher prices for us here in the U.S., unfortunately. And for China, I see a bad economic situation. They just, the this population pyramid does not look healthy at all. So take a look at a healthy population pyramid. This is Mexico. So as you can see here in Mexico, they have very few retirees and old people to take care of. They have quite a bit of people in their productive years and a growing population in their productive years. It looks like their birth rate in the last 20 years has decreased a bit, but they still have a pretty healthy population pyramid. In general, they're not going to have much growth for the next 20 years of people going into their 20s, but they're not going to have a huge growth in teenagers or children, it looks like, but they'll have a lot of growth of people going into their 30s and 40s and 50s. And in general, that's pretty supportive for economic activity, because all those people are working, they're buying homes, they're going on vacation, they are, putting their kids in school, they're buying their kids stuff. So Mexico actually has a pretty positive economic picture, in my opinion. And same with Colombia. So Colombia is another country that has a pretty positive demographic profile as well. They're not going to have huge growth of people in their 50s. They do have a lot of growth coming in retirees, but they also have large growth of people from the age of 42. People going into their early 40s, they're going to have a lot of growth in that demographic as well. They have shrinking growth of people at age 26. So, for people who were planning on buying an apartment in Colombia to rent out to college kids or, young people, that's going to be a shrinking demographic. So that wouldn't be a good investment. But then they have a growing number of people going into their 20s. But, you can see how using these demographic pyramids, you can really get a picture of what people are going to be spending their money on in the future. And one more thing I wanted to point out here. So this is the birth rate from 1933 to 2012. So as you can see, huge increase in birth rate from the depths of the Great Depressions here, all the way until 1962. So that was the baby boom right there. And then from 1962 down to like the mid 70s, that was decreasing birth rate. And then we have an increasing birth rate from 1975 to 87. And there's so one thing very interesting that Harry Dent did that I think is pretty brilliant. He actually took this live birth rate and basically added. So see this 46. I think he added 46 years to these numbers on the x-axis here. So if you add 46 years to that, which basically moves this chart to people's peak spending years, this is pretty brilliant actually. So it actually tracks economic activity with the Dow Jones Industrial Average adjusted for inflation. So what you're seeing here is the Dow adjusted for inflation here so basically this red is the immigration adjusted births lagged for peak spending. So that sounds very confusing, but all he's doing there is using all of these births in this chart and then plus adding immigration into these numbers and adjusting that for peak spending, so which is age 46. So all he's doing is basically adding 46 years to this axis down here on the bottom. Really brilliant in my opinion. So as you can see, the Dow actually does track that same index, the number of people at their peak, peak spending years. Basically, what this red is tracking is the number of 46-year-olds in the country who are spending the most amount of money. So as we can see, there was a peak in 1966, and then a sharp decrease into around 1980. So the Dow, basically what this is saying is that, it's pointing out that the 70s were a very tough time economically. We had very high inflation. People know that time as a time when oil went through the roof. Gold went from $35 an ounce to $700 an ounce. The price of all your food and everything just went through the roof until around 1980. And also this is a period of time when interest rates went up. Interest rates were going up to, I think, they were about 17% by the time we got to like 1980. And then since 1980, interest rates have been dropping since 1980. It looks to me like interest rates should have been dropping until about 2006, at which time, naturally, they should have been going up again. But, of course, we had the Federal Reserve intervening in the GFC, artificially lowering interest rates. So we've had artificially lowered interest rates for 15 years now, against which should have been an increasing interest rate. So as you can see, as the interest rates were dropping, the Dow, that was very supportive for economic activity. The Dow went up and up and up and up until this peak right here is the tech bubble in 2000. And since then, it kind of went sideways. Here, this other peak right here, that is the 2007 peak of the stock market. And, then it crashed and then, came back up again because the Federal Reserve pinned interest rates at zero. And, this chart was made in 2013. So he didn't plot this any further. But the stock market has actually gone up, 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 way up here until where we are right here, about 2021, where it says right here. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, if the Federal Reserve hadn't dropped interest rates, then interest rates probably would have gone way up, in my opinion, since 2006. And that makes a lot of sense because you have a record amount of retirees selling their bonds into the market since 2006. So that would make a lot of sense to me, but instead you get the Federal Reserve buying them. So that's what kept interest rates so low. What else to say here? So I guess in general, so we're right here, basically right at the trough of this spending wave here. So what does this mean? It looks to me like increasing economic activity until 2036, where you have this next peak. So what does that mean, though? Because that could mean a lot of things. I mean, that could mean higher inflation. I don't know. It's kind of out of whack at this point because we have such manipulated interest rates, because if the Federal Reserve hadn't pinned interest rates from 2006, if they haven't pinned it at zero, then it seems to me like the stock market would have dropped. But instead, it artificially went up. So what does that mean now? Geez, I don't know. I mean, what is the Federal Reserve going to do now? Are they going to just let interest rates normalize? Or, because if they did, I guess I guess that would indicate that the stock market would just go sideways or maybe even go down for the next 10 years or so. Who knows? I mean, these are political questions at this point. It's hard to predict, but it looks to me like we definitely have a big surge in economic activity from now. The end of this blue oval here. You have a big, quick surge from now until 2026. I mean, look at this huge rise in these red bars here. I mean, that tells me that you're going to have a huge increase in economic activity, in spending. So I guess that means higher real estate prices. And as we see, not apartment prices, but single family home prices, both starter and trade up homes. I think good investment to hold on to until 2026. I know a lot of people were worried about, interest rates are going up. Maybe that means the housing market's going to crash. I don't think so. This chart is suggesting otherwise until 2026. So keep that in mind. But after 2026, I mean, look at this. It's flat after 26. And I think that might be a shock, because what this is showing. So usually the market responds to a change in growth. So if the economy is going to grow really fast from now until 2026 and then just stop, I mean, even if it doesn't go down, it means that we're going to have this economy that's firing on all cylinders. Maybe business is booming, people are investing in all sorts of new stuff, people are building new homes, and then all of a sudden the population just their demand just flatlines right here at 2026. It flatlines until looks like about 2030. So I think from 2026 to 2030, I think those are going to be tough economic times. I really do. I think that's going to be a lot like 2008 to 2012. I think it's going to be like those 4 years. So in general, I think from now until 2026, I think we have 3 years of increasing economic activity until 2026. And then I think we have 4 years of stagnation, which is going to crush a lot of people, because a lot of people are going to be, I think the economy is going to be firing on all cylinders at this growth rate until 2026. And then all of a sudden, people are going to be still geared towards that growth rate, but the growth isn't going to be there anymore. And I think that's when bubbles pop. All of a sudden the market realizes that demand has dried up and supply keeps increasing, and that's when it pops. So I think the end of 2025, beginning of 2026 is when you start seeing economic downturn. That would be my projection, at least from looking at this chart. And I think it'll be that way until 2030. And then from 2030 to 2036. Yep, 2030 to 2036. You see, you have growth again. And then from 2036 down to 2041, you have decreasing growth. Sorry. So as you can see, this is a really powerful tool. It's a really powerful visualization of demographics and how they affect the economy and how they affect your investments, what you should be investing in, how you should be investing, what your time horizon should be, and it should alert you to these potential milestones like 2026, which I think is going to be a major top. You should be thinking that 2026, maybe in 2025 I should sell my house and just, maybe I should just rent for 4 years. Because, as you can see, I mean, we're going to be having decreasing demand for apartments. So actually in 2026, I think, apartments will be cheap and homes will be expensive. So seems to me like a good idea to sell your house in 2025 and rent an apartment for 4 years until 2030, and then buy something else. And, that way you can buy at the bottom and sell at the top. And that's how you build wealth. That's how you build wealth. And that's how the game is played. That's how you do it. So, the important part is just to see these trends and be able to read a chart like this, and this chart, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I've been talking about this for 54 minutes now. Sorry, I mean, I'm coughing up a lung here, but I'm just try to power through this. But still, 54 minutes I could talk about this stuff. It's really pretty incredible in my opinion. So what I wanted to show you, so if we head over here to TradingView, you can actually plot the population age 20 to 65 and the population over 65. You can actually plot it on TradingView, and that's what I did here. Excuse me. I apologize, folks, but gives you a chance to look at the chart for yourself and think about it anyway, without me having a yap at you. I think this says a lot. It really does say a lot. If we follow this orange line, this is the over 65 population. And this is the population that I think is pretty depressive to economic activity. These people are not these people are not producing anymore. They're beyond their producing years. They're now just consuming. So in general, I think when you have a increasing demographic of that age, it's generally supportive of increasing prices. So as you can see, let's start way back here in 1964. You can see the retirees are growing pretty steadily. And then there's kind of an inflection point around here, 1968, 1969. The retirees start to increase at an accelerating rate into the 70s. And they continue increasing at this very strong rate throughout the 70s. And it's not until, and the 70s were a pretty bad time economically. High inflation, low economic growth, and you're seeing it in the chart here. And then around here in around 1980, the rate of retirees starts to taper off a bit. It's still growing, but it's not growing as quickly. And the 80s, what do you know? That was a really pretty good economic period, right? I remember the 80s. It was great times. Oh man, I wish we could have times that good. And it's, you had a bit of an increase from 1987 into 1989. So you had a bit of a pretty sharp jump there. And, that's interesting because I think there was a kind of like a mini recession around here. Actually, you know what? If I turn on U.S. recessions right here, these green shaded times, these green shaded lines, this represents a recession. So as you can see, there was this jump in retirees, and not far after, there was a recession. That's pretty interesting. And, there was a recession from 1990 to 1991. Yeah, so yeah, that is interesting. But then it slowed again, and it actually really slowed a lot. The rate of retirees really slowed into 19. It was still growing, but it was growing at a decelerating rate into 1995. And actually, after 1995, it was decreasing. So this time from 1995 onwards down here, that's actually a good thing because that indicates that our society doesn't have to take care of as many old people as we previously did. We had a shrinking demographic of old people. And that means that our economy can invest in our industry. We can lower taxes for our productive class and support economic activity. And the late 90s was boom time. Look at a chart of the S&P. I mean, yeah, let's pull that up right now. Late 90s. Okay, we're back. So, same orange line, that is the population of retirees. And right now this royal blue line is the S&P 500. This is just the general stock market. Look at what happened here. So as soon as this demographic of retirees peaked and started decreasing, the S&P 500 just took off. It just took off like a bat out of hell, way up here to the peak of the dot-com bubble. So as you can see, this was, having a decreasing population of retirees was very, very economically supportive. So we've benefited from this decreasing demographic of retirees. We benefited from it from 1995 to about 2003, and after that point, we started increasing in retirees again, and it's very interesting because this second wave up is the housing bubble. So from 2003 or 2002 to 2007, that was that was boom time for the housing bubble, and pretty good run in commodities too. I think the commodities, that was mainly due to demand coming from China, because it's interesting that now we have huge amount of increasing population turning 65. You know what? I don't want to look at the S&P 500. I want to look at the median sales price of homes in the U.S. I think that'll tell us something. Okay, so this blue line now is actually the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. So this is basically a measurement of the housing market in the U.S. So it actually peaked in 2006, and so it actually peaked. It peaked a couple of years, or probably about a year before the general stock market. What happened here is basically the real estate is our economy. So if real estate starts crashing, the economy in general is not far behind. But what you're seeing here, this orange line again is the population of retirees. As soon as this starts increasing exponentially like this, guess what? The housing market starts rolling over, and this is when it started crashing. So that's very interesting. And why? So why would that be? I mean, these baby boomers now are starting to retire, and they're turning 65. They're retiring, and it's time to downsize. It's time to sell that big house that was made for a family, and time to downsize, and possibly eventually move into assisted living and all that stuff. So that's very interesting that we definitely see the peak in the housing market as soon as the retirees starts growing exponentially. Very, very telling. And at this point, so you see this this light blue or cyan line. So this line is the population aged 20 to 65. So this is the working age population. So as you can see, the working age population has been growing pretty strongly, but it kind of it hit a inflection point right here around January 2007, where it's still growing, but it's not growing as fast. It's decelerating, and it's still decelerating to this day. So that's it's all very. It should tell you something that we have a decelerating growth rate of productive people, and we have an exponentially increasing rate of growth in non-producing people. And that just happens to coincide with a peak in the housing market. And I don't think that's coincidental. I think that's very much consequential. I think that's very clearly showing you that demographics has really played a huge role in the housing bubble and the housing bust. So what can we take away from that? Well, let's be on the lookout for trends like that in the future. let's see. Let's go back to this chart. So what I've done here is I've taken the blue line here now is the median sales price of a home in the US priced in gold. And why did I price it in gold? Well, you see, when you price something in dollars, it's very hard to use the dollar as an economic unit when you're using measurements over a long period of times and you're looking at growth rates like this, and you're basically, so your y-axis is the US dollar. But what if the rate of increase of because they can make as many US dollars as they want. I mean, it's just a piece of paper at this point. So to me, it's not a good unit of measurement. And that's why I like to divide the price of something by the price of gold, because gold is a pretty solid unit of measurement. In fact, if you go back to the times of the Romans, an ounce of gold would buy a Roman gentleman a nice new robe, a nice new pair of sandals, and a haircut. And think about that today. An ounce of gold today is about $2,000. What does that buy you? Well, it buys you a brand new suit and a new pair of shoes and a haircut. So gold will buy you the same amount that it would 2,000 years ago. That is why I use gold as a unit of measurement. Gold is a pretty stable. It's a pretty stable value. It's as stable as you will find of a unit of value, and that's why I've divided the home price, the median sales home price, by the price of gold. And as you can see, it goes up and down. So what this is telling us is that there was a housing peak in 1969, and that was around the time when retirees started increasing exponentially. And what do you know? The housing market went down until 1980. Look at this, okay? What did I say? So this is when the rate of retirees started tapering off. Or not tapering off, but not increasing as fast. So increasing, but at a decelerating rate. So that was when the housing market bottomed when priced in gold. And from there on, housing market went up and up and up and up and up and up. And then, around 1995, when the retirees started actually decreasing, the housing market, when priced in gold, went way up. Look at those gains, okay? Up until this is March of 2001. So it's interesting to look at the housing market priced in gold, because when you look at it this way, the housing market actually, I mean, if you don't even, let's say you don't even worry about US dollars, let's say your money is gold, like gold, like money used to be, like the US dollar used to be. It used to be backed by gold. So let's say like that we never went off the gold standard. And you you kept all your money in gold, and you decided, I'm not going to use US dollars, I'm going to use gold. Well, for you, the housing market actually peaked in 2001. That's pretty interesting, huh? And that's around the same time when we had this trough in the population that was retiring. And then the price of homes actually went down when priced in gold once retirees started retiring again, or once that demographic started increasing again. So that's very interesting. And the housing market crashed until 2012. And now it's just kind of been going sideways. So the housing market, when priced in gold, it's gone up a little bit, but not much. So, that's really interesting. What else to say here? This is kind of got shifted over, I guess. Let's get this out of the way so it doesn't confuse people. Yeah, so what do we see here? One thing I'm seeing is that the population aged 20 to 65 peaked in 2018 and then started decreasing. And that's not a recipe for economic growth right here. what you're seeing right here is a flat line of the increase in in our productive population. So that, to me, that says no economic growth at all, unless you can make those people more productive. So if productivity is increasing, then the economy can increase. But if labor productivity is not increasing, the economy will not grow if the productive population is not growing. And if we have exponentially increasing non-productive population and productive population is not growing at all, that tells me that says to me that the economy is pretty much is kind of like being choked for air. That's what I'm seeing. And I think that's why we have such big problems as we do today. We have such a wide wealth gap, and our Federal Reserve, our central bank, has resorted to manipulating interest rates down to zero just to keep our financial system from collapsing. I mean, that was the only thing that, after 2008, that was the only thing that kept our economy propped up, was officially manipulating interest rates. So where do we go from here? I mean, it would seem that it really depends on what they do with interest rates. At that point, it's not an economic question anymore. It's a political question. It's tough to say. So let's see. What else can we say? Yeah, I mean, the housing market does not seem to have had much growth since 2012. I know people see that their house has gone up in value, and that's great. But when priced in gold, it actually hasn't moved much. So from 2012, from 2014, if you had, whether you had a house or had gold, had just kept your money in gold, your gold would have increased just as much as your house. This is what this ratio is saying. The sales price of a median sales price of a home in the U.S. has not outperformed gold in 10 years. So that's pretty interesting. So despite the fact that your house has gone up in value by, it's probably doubled since 2014. Well, gold has pretty much doubled as well. So, it's gone up just as much. Not quite doubled, but just as much. What else do we see here? I guess we'll take one more look at the S&P 500. Let's put this on a log scale. Yeah, it's very interesting. Since 2008, the economy's been so manipulated by the Federal Reserve and the government. It's not a free market anymore. Theoretically, this, with this exponential growth in people retiring, I would have expected the stock market to go down, because those people have to sell their stocks and their bonds in order to fund their lifestyle. But because the Federal Reserve has artificially suppressed interest rates, the stock market has just gone ballistic. So it's hard to make heads or tails about that at all. I guess it's just, don't know what else we can really say about that. But it seems like we're pretty much at the end of it. Now being 2023 on Harry Dent's spending wave here, it looks to me like we're going to have a 3-year jolt of economic growth. So I do think that we're going to start seeing a jolt in home prices, and not just in your nominal home price, but the actual, when compared to gold. I think you'll see that ratio jump as well. I think in general, real estate for the next 3 years has a lot of growing to do, but that really depends on the interest rate. So if the Federal Reserve decides to let interest rates normalize, then God only knows what happens. I don't think after having manipulated interest rates for so long, it's really tough to say what our economy is going to do with normalized interest rates, even though we do have an increasing it looks to me like we're going to have an increasing demographic who is at their peak spending year at age 46. So is that going to be enough to prop up the economy with high interest rates? I don't know. It certainly could, but I will tell you that, the next 3 years, if we see increasing economic activity, considering the exponential growth in retirees and old folks, I would bet my money on healthcare, assisted living, on nursing homes, drug companies, and I wouldn't bet on apartments. I would not bet on apartments at all. If you own apartments, I would. If I owned apartments, I would sell it. I would sell the apartment right away. And if you're committed to staying in the real estate market, the best play on that might be to either buy a single family home, like a starter home or a trade up home. Or, if you can see from these charts that starter homes and trade up homes are going to be increasing in value, well, then you might want to look at investing in, I don't know about home builders, but home builders will probably see some growth, but like building material suppliers, I think you'll see growth in that sector, because as people see that their home price is going up in value, they're going to start investing more in their homes. And, because everybody has these low interest rates locked in, and they're not going to be interested in selling their homes because, with higher interest rates, they know that, hey, if I sell my home, I'm going to have to buy a new home at, 5% interest rate. And that's not going to make sense from a monthly payment point of view. So you know what? I'm going to stay put and I'm going to fix up my house because, hey, it's increasing in value. I'm going to fix it up and, it'll increase in value even more. That's great. I'm feeling good. And I think people are going to be, investing in, new siding, new roofs, new trims, new kitchens. So all these building supplier companies, I think they have a lot of room to grow the next 3 years. So I think that'll be a good sector to invest in. I guess, this spending wave says furniture. So I don't know how you invest in a furniture company, but keep that in mind. That might be something. Or I guess, whatever. I guess we've said enough about it at this point. I hope you guys have found this pretty informative. I'm sorry it's gone on for like an hour and a half here, but I just find this stuff so intriguing. It's just incredible to me that you can predict the future using demographics. I think it's such a powerful tool to have in your investor's tool belt. Such a useful metric to base your investment decisions on. Thanks a lot for staying tuned till the very end. I'd love to hear what you think about this presentation in the comments here. So let me know what you think. And again, thanks for listening. Take care.